Welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have your company. The UN's top court in a case brought by South Africa has ordered Israel to prevent any acts of genocide in Gaza. But the ICJ stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. Well, that decision has prompted strong reactions in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 1993, Bosnia took the former Republic of Yugoslavia to court, hoping to prevent killings by Bosnian Serbs. But the measures issued failed to prevent mass atrocities which led to the Srebrenica Genocide in 1995. Many believe a ceasefire then would have saved thousands of lives. Survivors of that tragedy have signed an open letter appealing to the international community to not let history repeat itself in Gaza. Adama Munu spoke to a Srebrenica genocide survivor who says the ICJ ruling on Gaza is disappointing.
The court is also of the view that Israel must take measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to the members of the Palestinian group.
This is the moment when the UN's top court ordered Israel to take a series of provisional measures to prevent the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, but stopped short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. The measures are part of a broader case brought by South Africa earlier in January, accusing Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza in its retaliatory bombardment after the October 7th attacks and its ongoing occupation of Palestinian territories. It's an allegation that Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu and his Western allies have strongly denied and opposed.
Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous.
There have been 3 other such cases brought to The Hague, but this was one of the most closely watched rulings from the court since the creation of the Genocide Convention in 1948, which was established in the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were killed by Nazi Germany. The words "never again" were a constant theme, but they were not to be followed. The ICJ case prompts painful memories after it issued what were supposed to be preventative measures for Bosnian Serb leaders to stop their military onslaught during the Bosnian War. They went on to massacre thousands of Bosnian Muslim men and boys in 1995, the first such case of genocide in Europe since the Holocaust. Later in 2007, the Yugoslav court convicted defendants, including former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic and former military chief General Ratko Mladic, on genocide charges for their involvement in the Srebrenica massacre. And it's off the back of this that academic Arnesa Buljic-Kustura created an open letter to the ICJ, which has been signed by thousands of Bosniak genocide survivors. The letter asks the UN court to prevent a repeat of what happened in 1995 by implementing the provisional measures proposed by South Africa, including a ceasefire of Israel's onslaught against Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
Our traumas were awakening, and really we were unhappy. And really, for me, I couldn't watch those videos anymore. I stopped watching because I couldn't sleep. My sister had to go to the psychiatrist, and she took the pills and to feel better. She was crying, and I was really talking to her to not do that. So it's like it's happening again. We tried that, but it's happening again to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and really it was hard for us. I don't know. It's like people think we are like pretending. It's a trauma, really big trauma for us, and we know what they are going through. We tried to do something for them, and unfortunately we didn't. As a community, as a whole world, we didn't do almost anything.
The ruling has so far had no effect, as Israel's military has killed hundreds of Palestinians since then. And so the international community continues to face the challenge of ensuring the court's ruling is not only acknowledged but acted upon. The lives of countless civilians in Gaza and Israeli hostages hang in the balance. Adama Munu, Across the Balkans.
Joining me now is human rights lawyer Sir Jeffrey Nice. He took part in the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and was the lead prosecutor at Slobodan Milosevic's trial. Sir Jeffrey, great to have you with us on Across the Balkans. I really appreciate your time. Now, it's been over 3 decades since Bosnia took Serbia to the ICJ, and now looking back, a timely ceasefire could have saved thousands of lives. So it's no surprise that many are disappointed. We've heard their Srebrenica survivors as well, with the ICJ's decision to again impose only provisional measures in the South Africa case. What was your reaction to their decision?
I wasn't surprised, and in the particular circumstances of this conflict or war, I didn't really think there was any prospect of the court imposing the first or granting the first request, which has been described as a ceasefire, but it isn't. The request, which can only be effective on a member state, in this case, the state of Israel, asked that they cease warfare altogether. Now, had that happened, then they would have been facing Hamas, who was under no likely duty of any kind to stop fighting, and more important, maybe, they would have had no way of using any force in order to release the hostages. So I don't think it was surprising that the court made the decision that it did. Things might have been different if it had felt able to make a conditional order. Hamas gives up fighting and hands over all the hostages. Indeed, it said all the hostages should be handed over and Hamas should comply with international law. But it could have no reasonable grounds for expecting that Hamas would do that. Therefore, it couldn't make what you call a ceasefire, but which would be an order to one party to give up fighting, couldn't make that with any expectation that the other side would do the same thing. So no, I wasn't surprised.
Sir Jeffrey, like looking at Bosnia case, we waited in the region for a long time for certain verdicts to be brought in. I don't want to make any comparisons between the two, but I was wondering, where does, in legal sense, does the provisional measures leave this South Africa case? What happens next?
It's a very interesting question, and what South Africa has done is extremely important, in my view, because what we have to remember is that since 1952, when the Genocide Convention became effective, but more important, since the various states when big countries such as America or smaller countries like the United Kingdom acceded or ratified the convention, they were under a duty, following on their undertaking in Article 1, to act immediately, absolutely immediately, on sight of or recognition of genocide. Now, what happened in the Bosnia case, but it's happened in other cases as well, is that there has been evidence, plenty of evidence of genocide, but no country has ever said, we recognize now that we must act because there is evidence of genocide. And that's to the eternal shame of the United States, the United Kingdom, and all other countries that ratified the convention and that had the power to act. So the first 2 countries to act under Article 1 of the convention and to try and perform their duty were the Gambia, a few years ago, in respect of something that was happening in Myanmar, and South Africa in respect of the state of Israel. And it is showing the way both to what should have happened and what may happen in the future. I hope citizens of countries like my own will be asking their governments, why didn't you do what South Africa did? Now let's go back to 1994-95, or if you were a follower of Ambassador Diego Arria to 1993, when genocide was first being raised as a topic for discussion, and people were seeking to say this is genocide happening or about to happen. What should have happened? Countries like ours should have said, yes, there is now a risk of genocide, this crime that happens when one part of humanity seeks without reason of any kind to destroy another part of humanity. What should have happened?
Right.
Well, we should have said that. Let me finish.
Yeah, of course.
We now know that the Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, instructed his people, as advised by the Foreign Office's lawyers, never to use the word genocide, because if they did use that word, then the government would have to act. The government did not want to act. And as we know from United Nations reports into the issues both of Bosnia and Rwanda, failure to act cost many, many lives and is a matter of disgrace to the countries concerned and to the United Nations generally.
Right. Srebrenica genocide survivors at the moment are reliving their past again. Some of them said even they're asking from ICJ to look at their petition, asking for some action as soon as possible. You were part of that UN court. You were part of the tribunal for Yugoslavia, and a lot of criticism in the region on the way the courts worked. So where does this, now we are hearing again this very similar criticism when it comes to the war in Gaza. So where does this leave the ICJ? And people lost their trust in international justice at the moment.
Well, you may recall that the ICJ decision in Bosnia, Serbia was rendered in 2007, which gave an effective last date for revision of that judgment in 2017. And you may recall that I, together with one other person well known on your program, Dr. Nevenka Tromp, were engaged by people in Bosnia to do something right at the last minute in order to try and bring that judgment back to life and to achieve more by it. You'll also remember the circumstances in which we were thwarted, stopped from doing that which was by then the best thing we possibly could do, which was to ask the court for time to prepare a proper application for revision. And this, I'm afraid, brings disgrace on the government of the day in your country, as you will know. Now, whether it's still possible, after all this time, to go to the court again and say, look, that 2007 judgment was unsatisfactory. Can we have time, please? We need time because of the construction of the constitution of Bosnia, which stood in the way of our making effective revision. Can we have time, please, to make another proper go at seeking to have that judgment revised? Maybe that should happen. There are people who would like this to happen. I know their names, you may too, but unless I have their permission in advance, I probably shouldn't name them. But there are people who would like to see that happen. But there may be no will in the government of your country. And of course, the government of your country is beset forever by the result of the Dayton Agreement, which left it with a constitution that is hard to manage.
Sir Jeffrey, nice, great to have you with us on the show. Unfortunately, so many topics to discuss with you. I don't have any more time, but it was a pleasure to speak to you. And in Srebrenica, Bosnian Jews and Muslims marked International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Well, they've gathered in the city where the worst atrocities since the Second World War took place and called for the horrors of the past not to be repeated. Yasemin Çolakolu reports.
From Srebrenica, where Europe's last genocide took place, Muslims and Jews from Bosnia jointly called for unity and dialogue by signing a Jewish-Muslim peace initiative on Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Bosanski muslimani, Bošnjaci i bosanski Jevreji su jedno tijelo. Naše veze su tanke, tkane i u vremenima iskušenja i u periodima blagostanja i interakcije u kojima smo jedni od drugih učili u dobru se pomagali. Ali oba naša naroda su propatila i znaju šta su pokušaji da ih se istrijebi i uništi.
The gathering was organized by the Srebrenica Memorial, a center dedicated to keeping alive the memory of Europe's only genocide since the Holocaust. This is where more than 8,000 Muslim men and boys were killed by the Bosnian Serb forces, and their remains scattered across more than 3 mass graves. Countless victims are still missing, while others remain unidentified. Menahem Rosensaft, a lawyer and prominent Jewish community activist who co-signed the joint initiative, expressed a message of peace which was not entangled in politics.
Today, the time when this commemoration is the place for remembrance, for not allowing the ghosts of our past to fade away from us. And yet today is also a time, and this commemoration is also the place for us to jointly commit ourselves to doing everything in our power to prevent the horrors we remember here today from being repeated.
Munira Subasic, president of the Association of Mothers of Srebrenica, and Jakub Finci, leader of Bosnia's Jewish community, both genocide survivors, witnessed the signing of the initiative. It cites Jewish and Muslim traditions according to which anyone who saves a single life has saved the whole world. Both sides have committed to collaborating in times of crisis and maintaining open and compassionate communication. Yasemin Çolakoglu, Across the Balkans.